26 years ago, a young man in Plano left a convenience store under the familiar yellow lights and vanished without a trace, leaving his entire family plunged into an unending nightmare. Authorities suspected a man who had been seen around the store that night was involved, but with no body, no direct witnesses, and far too few clues to grasp, the investigation quickly stalled. Yet, for all those years, a team of investigators never gave up, always believing that the scattered details from 1998, the staged vehicle, the figure on CCTV, the missing key fragment, still held an unseen answer. Then one day, when the old case file was reopened, they discovered a small detail that everyone had overlooked for decades, a detail powerful enough to flip the entire case in a way no one could have imagined. Before diving deep into this twist-filled story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you like the video, don't forget to hit subscribe. Plano on a May evening has a stillness that makes it feel like the air itself is holding its breath before night fully descends. The straight suburban roads run between quiet neighborhoods, pale yellow streetlights reflecting off the asphalt still warm from the long day. On front lawns, automatic sprinklers arc misty curves of water, blending with the insect hum into a tiny but constant soundtrack, like the neighborhood's breathing. Ethan Ward left the office building as the sky turned deep blue, his shoulders slightly heavy after a day's work, but his steps steady. He drove through sparse intersections where traffic lights changed with no cars waiting. Plano at that hour wasn't a place for big events. Everything ran steadily, safely, almost too familiar for anyone to suspect anything. Ethan stopped at a convenience store on the corner, a brightly lit spot amid the thickening dark. Inside were just a few stray customers, a man picking out drinks, a woman buying some bread, and the cashier checking receipts. Ethan walked in, nodded politely out of habit, then picked out a few simple items like always. No one paid much attention to him. Those present later only remembered he looked normal, not stressed, not in a hurry. But when Ethan left the store, the scene carried a subtle oddity hard to name. The strong light from the awning fixtures cast his shadow onto the concrete forecourt, and at the edge of the parking lot, where darkness began to swallow the light, something stood still too long to ignore, and too faint for anyone to swear they'd really seen it. It could have been a car parked with lights off, a figure standing by a door, or just an illusion from the store lights reflecting off glass. That moment passed so quickly, no one thought twice, but enough that years later, when mentioned, people shivered at details no one noticed at the time. Ethan stepped into the night, opened his car door, and drove off. Just that, a simple action like thousands of other evenings, but this time, he didn't come home. His phone went silent, messages sent got no reply. At first, time passed slowly, as everyone tried to convince themselves Ethan had just stopped somewhere, or was busy, or out of signal. But as it got late, then past midnight, when every reasonable explanation fell apart, worry crept into the living room where his family waited. They tried calling colleagues, checked if he'd stopped at a friend's, searched for any sign he'd mentioned something. Nothing. The silence grew unnaturally prolonged, then taut like a string, then a choking feeling in their throats, the kind families only get when they know something is completely wrong. And when they could delay no longer, the family had to call the police, marking the moment a quiet Plano evening was torn apart by a disappearance no one saw coming. The Plano Police Department received the missing person call well into the night, when most of the city was silent, and only patrol units cruised slowly through the suburbs. No high-priority signs like violence or accident, but the phrases "no contact for hours" and "no prior history" immediately prompted the desk to forward it to the Adult Missing Persons Unit. In cases like this, a fast initial response is key. Either it's resolved in hours, or it becomes a black hole. Less than 10 minutes after intake, the first two officers arrived at Ethan's home to gather basic data, daily habits, quitting time, usual route, recent mental state, and especially the last moment the family was sure Ethan was fine. Every answer was consistent. Ethan had no reason to vanish, no recent personal conflicts, and that evening's schedule was completely normal, except for stopping at the convenience store before heading home. The empty gap between leaving work and not showing up at home became the initial focus. Plano PD sent officers to the office building. The night staff confirmed he left at a time matching the family's account. Lobby camera captured Ethan walking out alone, calm, no one with him, no strange vehicles following. This locked in Ethan's last safe point. He left work completely normally. Next, another team went to the convenience store, the only stop the family knew he'd made. Store staff confirmed Ethan had been there, and police immediately requested the video. Wide-angle cameras captured the whole sequence. Ethan entered, picked items, paid, then walked out. No arguments, no unusual interactions with any customers. But the key was the exit footage. As he pushed the glass door and stepped outside, police noted how the light slid across the concrete, then cut off at the dark parking lot edge. The camera didn't cover the lot, so the image stopped at the threshold. That was the last tech-captured moment, and notably, no camera showed Ethan driving toward home as usual. For investigators, this opened three possibilities. 1. Ethan changed direction for unknown reasons. 2. Ethan left the store, but was interfered with in the area outside camera view. 3. Someone else drove Ethan's car after he was out of sight. Though inconclusive, early data showed whatever happened to Ethan occurred very close to the store, within a few hundred feet of the door. Police began identifying everyone in the store when Ethan was there. Staff provided payment logs and descriptions. Man buying beer, woman buying bread, a young guy getting cigarettes, plus two who entered and left quickly. All captured on video. Investigators zoomed in on frames, watched behavior, but no one showed signs of following or approaching Ethan. All movements inside were disconnected, no clear links. On the third video review, a very faint but unignorable detail caught attention. Light from the exterior glass reflected a streak of motion on the mirror, like someone standing in the parking lot's dark area, or inside a parked car. The reflection was too blurry to identify, but its existence kept investigators from ruling out someone watching the store beforehand. Though not usable as evidence yet, it shaped an initial direction. The team immediately prioritized verification points. Ethan left the store alone, no one followed in recorded space, no exterior camera to confirm his turn, no evidence he left the area toward home. Thus the last image confirmed point, Ethan stepped out the door and vanished from camera view. From there, all data was hypothesis until evidence. Plano PD set initial lines based on 3 axes. 1. Verify Ethan's post-store movement via intersection cameras, nearby store lot cameras. 2. Identify all customers and take statements. 3. Sweep the area around the store in a close radius to check for interference right after he exited. No emotion, no guesses, just the first procedural steps to reconstruct the short but critical path from the brightly lit store glass to the dark where Ethan disappeared in unseen seconds. Plano PD moved to the next phase that very first morning, mapping the most logical full route Ethan would take leaving the convenience store and heading home as usual. This was crucial, because in a no-trace disappearance, pinpointing right direction but no appearance is often the first sign something happened in a very short distance. Ethan's home was just minutes from the store, via a simple straight route, through 2 major intersections and 3 minor ones. Investigators immediately requested traffic cameras from city management, plus footage from commercial stores along the homeward axis. If Ethan followed his routine, his Camry would almost certainly appear on at least one. But when data was compiled, the answer was blank. No images of Ethan's car in the relevant time frame. Not at the first intersection, not the second, not at private camera stores, not at the commercial lot 1 block from home. Every logical route was silent, as if the car never left the store. This forced investigators to face 2 opposing but alarming possibilities. 1. Ethan turned a different way right out of the lot, not toward home. 2. Ethan didn't drive away from the area himself. The team checked every road segment around the store, expanding in a fan pattern. Plano isn't remote. Most areas have enough traffic for intersection cameras to catch plates or at least vehicle shapes. The Camry vanishing from the starting point suggested if Ethan was interfered with, it happened within dozens of meters from where the camera cut off. This matched the earlier faint reflection, a shadow or vehicle in the lot's dark, possibly watching Ethan without direct recording. From here, investigators outlined 3 hypothesis models. Hypothesis 1, Ethan voluntarily changed direction. He might have turned opposite to home, but for this to hold, his car would appear at one of 3 civilian camera turns, but it didn't. This weakened the hypothesis significantly. Hypothesis 2, Ethan left the store but was blocked in the lot. A subject approached, possibly forcing him into another vehicle or controlling him. If so, someone else drove the Camry. This explains no camera seeing Ethan head home, but raises a new question: which way did the driver go? It would have to be a narrow path, outside cameras, and very close to the store. Hypothesis 3, staging made the car appear elsewhere. This couldn't be proven yet, but couldn't be ruled out early. Some disappearances involve staging, starting with the car not appearing logically. Based on these, police set an initial search radius in a spiral structure, starting from the parking lot and expanding in 500-meter rings, checking every alley, empty lot, dead end and late business lots. Around the store were key spots: a row of empty evening offices, a small park with dark entry, a low-traffic truck lot, and a cluster of loop roads to low camera areas. These became sweep focal points. The PD search team coordinated with patrols to check every map position, especially road segments without camera coverage. K9 units were deployed, but Ethan's scent trail nearly vanished at the store, consistent with leaving by vehicle, not on foot. Piecing all data, investigators concluded the loss of trace happened not en route home, but at the store, or within a few hundred meters. Ethan appeared on no cameras after exiting, didn't enter traffic toward home, left no biological signs or dropped items on the way. For a disappearance, that's the classic intercept pattern, a direct intervention, as the victim leaves the last known point. This led to the Plano PD facing a troubling reality: whatever happened to Ethan happened quickly, precisely, and with almost no trace, causing the disappearance to fall into a gray area from the very first minutes. And from that moment, the initial search radius no longer revolved only around the route home, but expanded to directions no one thought Ethan would go on his own, unless another hand intervened. Plano PD shifted to the field search phase the very next morning, as hypotheses about Ethan being interfered with right after leaving the convenience store became clearer. The image gap from cameras, and the complete lack of signs of the Camry moving toward home, forced investigators to consider the incident occurring just a few hundred meters from the store's glass door. This focused the search on the surrounding terrain, where streetlights began to thin and dark patches opened up more possibilities than what cameras captured. The search team was mobilized, including patrol officers, K9 units, and trained volunteers. Plano is a suburb with interwoven terrain, narrow roads connecting neighborhoods, unused empty lots, drainage ditches leading to smaller branches of the stormwater system, and parks with tree-shaded entrances. All these points shared a common trait: very easy for someone to approach a victim without being seen. The area was divided into search grids expanding radially from the convenience store. The first team swept the narrow roads right next to the parking lot, segments cameras didn't cover, and that could allow a vehicle to move unnoticed. No suspicious traces, no skid marks, no plastic shards, no scrape marks from a vehicle against walls or curbs. If there was a collision, it should have left at least some sign, but the road surface only had old unrelated streaks. The second team checked the empty lots behind the commercial area. Some lots were just rough dirt, unused for years. Others were flatter, sometimes with temporary parked vehicles. However, soft soil or road dust showed no signs of a struggle, fall, slide, or anything thrown down. The scene was almost absolutely silent. No scattered cans, no personal items, no footprints matching Ethan's size. Everything was strangely clean, as if anything that happened here had been covered by the previous night's darkness itself. The K9 team was brought into the drainage ditches and trails leading to the nearby small park. The dogs were given a scent sample from Ethan's personal item and led in a spiral pattern. However, the scent trail quickly weakened, as it moved away from the convenience store. The only sign the canines reacted to was in the area right next to the parking lot, consistent with the last camera captured point. From there the trail cut off immediately, as if Ethan left the lot by vehicle, not on foot. Notably, in many similar disappearances, canines can often track scent at least a few hundred meters, unless the victim left the scene in an enclosed space, like inside a vehicle. This indirectly reinforced the hypothesis that Ethan did not leave on his own. Police continued expanding the search to the park, with an entrance obscured by tree canopy. This park had small jogging paths, some leading to empty lots, and some dead-ending. In many cases, this is where dropped, discarded or forgotten evidence is found, but this time, the ground had nothing but dry leaves and old trash. Investigators looked for signs of a vehicle turning in, tire tracks, churned soil, small plastic pieces, but found absolutely nothing unusual. The area's cleanliness made investigators both relieved and concerned. Relieved because it seemed this wasn't the incident site, but concerned because it meant no additional clues. The team searching the drainage ditches checked every accessible segment. Water flowed lightly, levels low, with no traces of clothing, papers, or items that could float downstream. The debris screens at the ditch ends were thoroughly inspected, as they often catch small objects, but all were clean. No signs of anyone being dragged or falling in, no scrapes on the banks, no hand or shoe prints. This was especially important, because if evidence was tossed in, the chances of it being retained here were high, yet the result was still zero. When compiling all the data, investigators realized something frightening. No scattered evidence, no collision signs, no brake marks, no footprints, no point indicating where Ethan met harm. The terrain around the store, instead of providing clues, was like a void, smooth, clean, and completely unwilling to reveal anything. This is the type of scene investigators call a silent zone, an area where any suspicious event occurred in too short a time, and with such high precision, that the ground had no time to record traces. Plano PD had to face a new reality. The field search didn't bring them closer to answers but only emphasized one thing. The disappearance of Ethan was not random, and if there was intervention, it happened at a level of secrecy and speed that left zero traces. On the third morning since Ethan vanished, Plano PD received a call later seen as the case's first turning point. A regular jogger at Oak Point Park and Nature Preserve reported seeing a vehicle parked unusually deep in the eastern parking area, a spot rarely used in the early morning, and even rarer at night. When the desk heard the plate description, they immediately noted, the old silver Camry matched Ethan's information perfectly. The car's appearance there shocked not only the family, but the entire investigation team, as Oak Point Park was many miles from the convenience store, and completely outside any route Ethan had reason to take. When the investigation team arrived, the scene at the parking lot evoked a chilling feeling despite the high sun. Oak Point Park and Nature Preserve is one of Plano's largest nature areas, but the eastern parking section, where the jogger found the car, was very low traffic. It was obscured by large trees, with a narrow entrance, and typically used only by maintenance staff or trekkers taking back routes. Ethan's car being here was like someone deliberately brought it to the least noticeable spot, but not fully hidden, a half-concealed, half-exposed placement that immediately put investigators on alert. The Camry was parked neatly, parking brake engaged, doors locked, no signs of collision, no dents or scratches. If this was an accident, there should have been skid marks, debris, or at least a grass swipe. But the surrounding ground was clean, recording no physical impact. The car's presence here didn't bear accident characteristics. It bore the mark of intentional decision. This prompted the team to ask who drove the car here, Ethan or someone else. The doors showed no signs of forced entry. This was especially important, because if someone wanted to handle the car at night, breaking in could leave marks. But everything was intact, meaning the lock was opened with a key, either by the owner or someone with a key. No immediate conclusion, but the scenario of Ethan driving himself here was hard to rationalize, especially with no known reason for him to go deep into the park late at night, and no evidence he had activities or interests tied to this area. Inside the car, Police observed quickly through the windows. The driver's seat was adjusted farther back than Ethan's habit per family. Gear shift still in park, a few small items out of place. No blood, no struggle signs, no damage. A cleanliness that felt more eerie than reassuring. When the door was opened with specialized tools to avoid disturbing fingerprints, the team confirmed the interior had no direct hints. Ethan met trouble here: no wallet, no phone, no scattered papers. More accurately, the inside was like a car calmly driven here, shut off, locked, and left. What caught investigators' attention was the surrounding context. The road into the lot was narrow, one car wide, low light, no cameras. If someone wanted to bring Ethan's car here without being recorded, this was perfect. The trail from the lot into the park was thick with trees, enough to obscure someone leaving the car in seconds. Not finding Ethan in the car led investigators to weigh two possibilities. He left the car on his own for some reason, or someone else left after bringing it. And the common thread, both meant Ethan was not at the scene when the car was found. The field search team immediately expanded operations around the lot. They went deep along trails, sweeping every side path into the woods. Oak Point Park has dozens of hectares of forest, small lakes, wooden bridges, many hard-to-distinguish forks. If someone wanted to move through here at night, undetected, a small flashlight was enough. The K9 unit was called again, this time scenting areas closest to the car, but like at the store scene, Ethan's scent didn't appear in any extended direction from the Camry. This suggested a high likelihood Ethan didn't leave the car on foot, or if he did, he was transferred to another vehicle in a very short time. Investigators then analyzed the parking position, not at the curb, not on the straight path, but in a deeper corner where other cars rarely parked. This could be the driver deliberately avoiding view from the entrance. It might even indicate someone familiar with the terrain, or who had been here before. This wasn't the position of someone accidentally driving into the park. This was the position of someone who knew what they were doing. No Ethan around the area, no personal items, no signs of fall impact or dragging. The car was like an empty shell left behind, no explanation, no context. For investigators, this was the moment the case shifted from adult missing person to inexplicable disappearance with signs of external intervention. And the car sitting silently in the Oak Point Park and Nature Preserve lot became the first pivot point from now. The question was no longer where did Ethan go, but who drove Ethan's car, and why bring it here. When Ethan's Camry was sealed and transported to the Plano PD evidence lot, the investigation team entered the detailed interior analysis phase, a process that often doesn't yield immediate answers but can reveal what outdoor scenes cannot. If a disappearance happens quickly and tracelessly, the car is often the only silent witness, and in Ethan's case, that silent Camry soon showed it held more inconsistencies than the surface suggested. The first detail that jumped out to investigators was the driver's seat position. Per family and colleagues, Ethan was under 5'9", usually adjusting the seat close to the wheel for easy road view, but the found seat was pushed back to a level unreasonable for his build. This wasn't a few-inch accidental shift, but a significant one, enough to cause clear discomfort if Ethan drove in it. Investigators quickly ruled out the seat shifting during towing or police opening. It was fixed, secure, showing the last driver intentionally adjusted it back. If that was Ethan, there had to be a reason. But with no reasonable one, investigators leaned towards someone else sitting in the driver's seat. Next was the rearview mirror. It was adjusted high, suiting someone much taller than Ethan. Height, reflection angle, and tilt all differed from Ethan's usual setup. This is a detail frequent drivers easily spot. Mirrors are adjusted to personal habit and rarely shift without another user. Back seat plus high mirror became the first pair of indicators. The final driver wasn't the victim. Then, on the interior and exterior door handles, investigators found swipe cleaning marks, not fully wiped like car cleaning but flat area wipes to obscure fingerprints. Notably, the wipes were inconsistent. Exterior driver handle wiped horizontally, interior wiped vertically, unrelated. This showed the wiper wasn't professional, just trying to erase fingerprints at points they thought would be checked. No reason for Ethan to wipe his own handles. This led to a clear inference: Someone touched the car, then tried to erase their own fingerprints. Upon close interior inspection, the team found a series of off-tone points, small but crucial details that in disappearances often reveal more than appearances. A small receipt slightly shoved toward the passenger seat instead of in its holder. Ethan's sunglasses too deep under the seat, like accidentally dropped while moving. Radio knob turned to a station. Ethan never listened to water bottle in the door pocket with cap askew. Family confirmed not Ethan's habit. These details alone could be meaningless, but together they formed a chain, showing a stranger was inside, sat, handled, changed items without enough care to restore original states. Investigators paid special attention to the dashboard area's small item arrangement. Ethan was tidy, habitually placing everything correctly: spare key in center console, coins in small tray, tissues neatly folded. In the car, tissues were pulled open from the box, one corner lightly crumpled, with drag marks from usual position near the gear shift. No clues of scuffle, but these mild irregularities often result from another person in the driver's seat, rummaging or handling hastily. All these signs formed a hazy but meaningful picture. The car was staged in a sloppy enough way to not seem odd to casual observers, but full of discrepancies to professionals. Wrong seat, off mirror, disturbed items, wipe marks on handles, all pointed to one thing: Ethan's car was driven by someone else and attempted to be left clean, but not thoroughly. Most importantly, was the standout feeling when piecing data. The car bore clear marks of a third hand, someone not on store camera, not on intersection camera, leaving no footprints or evidence in search areas, but leaving traces in the Camry's enclosed space where harder to hide. This person's presence wasn't visible the night Ethan left the store, but emerged clearly in the cabin. No violence mess, no struggle signs, but something intangible: intent, coldness, and half-hearted caution of someone wanting to erase traces. From that moment, investigators knew the case had left the ordinary adult missing zone. No doubt, someone else intervened in Ethan's car after he left the store, and that intervention left the Camry in a remote Oak Point Park and nature preserve lot, with no sign of Ethan anywhere in hundreds of meters. What the team found in Ethan's Camry was enough to prove third-party intervention, but not enough to identify who. This forced them back to the only remaining starting point: witnesses around the convenience store, people who might have seen something they didn't know they saw. In many tight disappearances, witnesses don't bring immediate answers, but create noise fragments that can piece into a vague direction to follow. And in Ethan's case, just so unclear pieces began emerging, all shrouded in the fog of that night's memory. Investigators returned to the convenience store during the next morning's peak hours to find regular customers, those habitually stopping at the same time Ethan was there. Store staff recalled a detail they hadn't thought of the previous night. There seemed to be a gray pickup parked at the lot's edge, lights off like it had been there longer than usual. He wasn't sure, just remembered glancing while stepping out for a smoke and seeing a neutral-colored pickup, 90s model, windows fogged. When asked if he saw anyone inside, he shook his head. "I think there was someone, but not clear. I didn't pay attention then." This detail didn't contradict existing data, but wasn't specific enough for model, plate, or driver ID. Another witness, a middle-aged woman living nearby who often walked past the store, stated that on the night Ethan vanished, she saw someone standing next to a light-colored vehicle. She wasn't sure if it was Ethan's car, but remembered the figure standing very close to the body, like waiting for someone or looking inside. When asked why she remembered this, she said the stance wasn't like waiting for friends or family, something too still. She described the figure as blurry, somewhat tall, straight posture, and especially very little movement. But when asked for more specifics, her memory faded: no clothing, no hair, no lights on the car. All that remained was a shadow in the night. Investigators repeated the question they had to ask many times: "Are you sure it was that night?" She hesitated. "I think so, but it could have been a previous night. All evenings are the same." In investigations, that's the most dangerous answer, a potentially important detail, but memory not anchored to a clear time. Cross-referencing witness statements with store CCTV, investigators noted a troubling coincidence: the glass reflection, the faint light they saw in the footage of Ethan exiting, had a shape quite compatible with what the two witnesses described: a person standing in the dark corner, near the lot's edge. Unclear if standing next to Ethan's car or another vehicle, but a human figure in the darkness near the store was mentioned by two independent sources. However, all image enhancement efforts yielded no clear silhouette. It was just a human-shaped shadow. Another customer, a young man, stated that when he drove into the lot, he saw at the far end something like a car door slightly open then closing. He wasn't sure what he saw related to Ethan, and didn't remember the exact time, just that he thought someone had just gotten out to enter the store. But in the video, no one entered the store at the time, he said, meaning if that detail was accurate, it happened outside CCTV range, where Ethan's car might have been parked before being taken. Police also found a delivery driver who passed the store that night. He remembered two vehicles close together, but not colors, not positions, and certainly not if they appeared simultaneously or coincidentally overlapped. "Maybe I imagined it," he admitted, "because I just glanced and drove on." All the statements shared a common point: they were vague, lacking details, lacking a solid timeline, and without strong verifiability. But precisely because they were vague in overlapping ways, they became noteworthy. All spoke of a person in the dark corner, a gray pickup, someone standing next to a light-colored vehicle, or a car door that might have opened then closed. Each statement was like a very faint spark, easily confused, but when placed together, they suggested the presence of another individual or vehicle at the moment Ethan left the store. The problem was, no statement was solid enough to be used as evidence. No license plate, no clear face description, no time confirmation, no images. Nothing helped investigators shorten the suspect list. All they had was a general feeling that night. Someone was standing in the darkness, watching the store, and that person was not Ethan. With these loose facts, the investigation team had to set them aside while still noting them as faint patterns, signs that might become important later when the full picture emerged. But at this point, they were just hazy echoes of a night too quiet, too dark, and too easy for people to forget what they had seen. The vague clues from witnesses, the gray pickup, the figure standing close to a vehicle, the door that might have opened then closed, were not enough to lead the investigation in a clear direction. So Plano PD had to return to the only place providing a real physical anchor, Oak Point Park and Nature Preserve, where Ethan's Camry was found. If any trace showed Ethan had been in this area, or was brought here, it had to be somewhere in the dozens of hectares of forest, trails, and interspersed wild land. The search team shifted to expanded mode, a systematic grid search, in which the entire area was divided into small field cells, each swept thoroughly by 4 or 5 investigators. The parking lot area where the Camry was found was the starting point. From there, teams swept deeper in 3 directions: the northern trail into dense trees, the path along the small lake to the east, and the dirt road to the west connecting to a low vegetation area. In similar disappearances, locations like forest trails, lake banks, or stagnant land patches are often where small evidence, like paper, wallet, keys, fabric scraps, can fall when a victim is forced. But this time, all that was found were indistinguishable old footprints, water bottles, and picnic trash from prior outings. No trace evidence related to Ethan, no fabric matching clothing colors, no papers, no signs of dropped items. The ground was covered in fresh May leaves, night dew helping erase passing footprints quickly. Each search team step almost filled in old traces, making before-after distinction nearly impossible. A dive team was sent to the small eastern lake area, though no evidence suggested Ethan was near water. However, in missing persons investigations, any water body must be checked. Divers used hooks, nets, and underwater cameras to sweep the bottom, but found nothing notable beyond beer cans, a few old fishing hooks, and unrelated plastic pieces. The standing water, low flow, was inherently good at retaining evidence, but that stillness confirmed that if anything was tossed here, it wasn't an easy view. The northern forest area was far more complex. Thick canopy made light hard to reach the ground. Many trails weren't on official maps, small paths created by walkers, cyclists, or wildlife. Investigators swept every meter of soil, looking for drag marks, unusual leaf disturbances, tire tracks deep into the woods. But everything nearly matched natural state. No new trails opened, no churned soil, no long scratches, indicating heavy objects dragged. Wild grass stood straight, as if nothing had passed. The most frightening was the silence. Everything was as expected for an early summer nature park, bearing no signs of abnormality. In intervention cases, surrounding scenes usually show some disturbance, however small, but at Oak Point Park, everything was disturbingly intact. Investigators faced a tough puzzle. Ethan's car was clearly brought here, but no signs he was too. Even K9 Saad, on a second scenting, couldn't track from the car into the woods or open lots. This reinforced a scary possibility. The car might have been brought here without Ethan, or Ethan transferred to another vehicle before the Camry was abandoned. May weather also complicated the search. Daytime heat dried soil fast, making footprints and tire marks hard to identify. Morning humidity, plus sudden showers, blurred potential trace evidence. A light rain the evening. The car was found. Made investigators worry any existing ground traces were erased in hours. Texas weather sometimes isn't just a search enemy, it's what erases entire stories the ground tried to hold. Days later, as the search expanded to the park's outer boundaries, results were still zero. No body, no Ethan items, no fabric, no blood, no shoe prints, no strange tire marks. Trails continued into silence. Peripheral exits provided no clues. Trash cans, public restrooms, picnic areas were all thoroughly checked but yielded nothing. Combining all data, investigators reached a temporary but important conclusion. Oak Point Park was likely not the incident site, but only where the Camry was abandoned. This pushed the case into dangerous territory. If the event didn't happen at the store, not en route home, not in the park, then the gap, the short time from Ethan exiting the store to the car appearing here, was becoming a completely dataless segment. After nearly a week of fruitless searching, the Ethan Ward disappearance began to slow, not because police gave up, but because they had exhausted all areas possibly holding physical clues to the maximum. Everything was becoming a maze with no exit, the car appearing inexplicably, the park too clean, witnesses too vague, cameras unrecording, and Ethan still no trace. Forced the team to face the truth. Whatever happened to him was executed with near absolute secrecy. After nearly a week scouring Oak Point Park with no physical traces, investigators had to shift away from the scene and return to the most basic principle of any disappearance. Start with those closest to the victim. When no terrain clues exist, the only remaining method is screening the victim's entire social network to see if anyone had reason, opportunity, or a schedule overlapping the disappearance moment. This isn't a breakthrough direction, but in sealed cases, it often reveals small details absent from cameras or scenes. The first list included family, close friends, direct colleagues, and those Ethan contacted in the 2 weeks prior. Plano PD called each to the station or visited homes for interviews. These talks weren't to find criminals immediately, they were to redraw Ethan's life map, checking for conflicts, pressures, or unusual relationships that could explain deviating that night. Initial results: nothing stand out. Ethan was described as calm, disciplined, no workplace conflicts, no debts, no romantic troubles. Investigators noted this stability with paradoxical feeling. Sometimes the most regimented people are the hardest to explain disappearing. At work, police checked entry-exit logs, lobby cameras, and company badge systems. No one left the building with Ethan that day. Nearby desk colleagues remembered nothing unusual. A male colleague with a minor conflict months earlier was brought in for statement. He fully cooperated, providing solid alibi. At Ethan's store time, he was at a bar over 12 miles away, with camera proof. No motive, no suspicious behavior. A neighbor family described as overly attentive to others was summoned. He had been overly friendly on occasions, making Ethan's family slightly uncomfortable, but checking phone history, neighborhood cameras, and his wife's statement all matched, creating undeniable alibi. He never left the neighborhood the night Ethan vanished. Another individual drew more attention, a man working at a nearby convenience store, previously warned by police for minor customer altercations. When Ethan stopped that day, this man was in the area, but outside, near the delivery point, not inside. Investigators closely reviewed side door CCTV. The man didn't enter the parking lot when Ethan left, and his shift end didn't overlap the disappearance. Still, police conducted thorough interrogation. Results consistent statement, matching schedule, no unexplained gaps. Every Ethan acquaintance was checked against 6 criteria: closest connection, potential motive, access capability, disappearance time schedule, unusual behavior changes, and silhouette match to the faint CCTV store figure. No one met 3+ criteria to become a real suspect. Investigators tried reconstructing the glass-reflected figure, the person in the dark area camera, captured as a blurry outline. They assessed relative height to the doorframe, shoulder width, movement direction, then cross-referenced dozens on the screening list, from male colleagues to men in the store, when Ethan arrived. No one matched fully. A few had similar height but not stance, others similar stance but not distance. Some weren't near the area. This made the team more convinced the reflection figure wasn't Ethan's acquaintance. A temporary direction was deployed. Was someone stalking Ethan, or randomly selecting him at the store area? But Plano isn't a place for street crime like random abductions, and area crime maps showed no similar attacks or disappearances in the prior 3 years. Police also reviewed data on prior offenders living within a few miles of the store. List of a few dozen, mostly petty theft, domestic violence or property violations. One had stalked women in parking lots 3 years prior, but when summoned, he provided night shift warehouse proof nearly 20 miles from Plano. Some others on the list, especially those with vehicles matching gray pickup descriptions, were visited at home by investigators. Results generally the same. No one near the store at the time, and many didn't own anything like the witness-described vehicle. Despite interrogating dozens over 2 weeks, no one stood out as a real suspect. No personal conflicts, no dangerous acquaintances, no clear motives, and no one matching the CCTV dark figure. Every screened person had schedules, witnesses or cameras proving their locations. When investigators compiled all results, they faced a familiar scenario in no trace disappearances. The potential suspect circle narrowed to no one in the victim's known circle. If no acquaintance did it, only one possibility remained. The intervener in Ethan's life was a complete stranger, no prior connection, perhaps appearing only in the moment he stepped out of the convenience store. And that shifted the case to a dangerous phase. No more inward investigation, only outward, endlessly wide. In the Ethan Ward file, this was the first time Plano PD admitted to each other the case might not resolve quickly. With all acquaintances eliminated, and no one matching the figure the night Ethan vanished, the case began taking on the color of mysterious disappearances. Police hate facing reasonless missing, nameless suspect and evidence near zero. 3 weeks after Ethan vanished, and all acquaintances nearly thoroughly screened, the case file fell into worrisome state. No suspects, no physical clues, no verified witnesses, and no signs Ethan left the store in his own car. Right at that deadlock moment, Plano PD received an anonymous call, the kind of tip investigators both hope for and wary of, because in foggy cases, they usually bring 2 possibilities, either a major step forward or a misdirected arrow. The call came in the evening, when the desk had only a few officers. The man's voice on the other end was hoarse, speaking fast and almost breathless between sentences. He was forced into a silver pickup. Then the line cut immediately. No time to probe further. No info on time, location, suspect, plate, or caller. Just one short sentence, but enough to grab the team's attention instantly. From the case start, only 2 vague witnesses mentioned a gray pickup shadow near the convenience store. The anonymous call mentioning a silver pickup created a troubling coincidence. It could be random, but also possibly a truth fragment someone was trying to reveal. Plano PD requested reverse trace on the call. Result: it originated from a public phone outside an old gas station 6 miles south of Ethan's store. Station cameras yielded nothing useful, system too old, low angle, and the caller stood out of view. Just a blurry shadow, tall figure but unclear face, slightly hunched at the phone booth. Couldn't distinguish gender, no vehicles seen, no identifying signs. Without the voice, it would seem just a passerby. Investigators went to the scene, checked around the booth. No special shoe prints, no fresh cigarette butts, no cans or dropped items, just thin dust on the ground. Sign the area was low traffic. This cleanliness again made police suspicious. The call seemed prepared, not someone casually knowing. The caller knew exactly what to say, and where to say it without detection. The call content also raised big questions. If true that Ethan was forced into a silver pickup, it meant he was approached in the lot, or right after exiting the store. This fit the hypothesis Ethan was blocked before reaching his car, or forced out while driving. But examining silver, investigators noted the issue. Prior witnesses said gray. Under streetlights, silver and gray are easily confused. This overlap made the call impossible to ignore. But the biggest problem, did the caller know accurate info, or just repeat local news? Ethan's disappearance news had spread in Plano by then. Media mentioned Oak Point Park, abandoned Camry, and faint CCTV figure. Some reports even referenced witness statements about a gray pickup. If the caller was just echoing available info, the call was useless. But if the caller really saw something, or worse was involved, it could be the only clue as the case began cooling. To verify, investigators swept the entire gas station and 500-meter radius around the booth. They asked station staff, regulars, and even homeless, who gathered nearby. But no one remembered anyone using the phone at the corresponding time. One vagrant said he saw a tall person in a baseball cap, but when asked cap color, shirt, or direction gone, he couldn't remember. The more asked, the vaguer the answer, like the CCTV figure itself. Plano PD continued tracing from a technical angle. They cross-referenced the call with news broadcast times, searching for anyone with motive to inflate or create noise in the information. But no one stood out on the list. The call appeared too timely, right when investigators were running out of approaches, and too lacking in details to serve as guidance. It was like a line cut from an unfinished story, no beginning, no end. After thorough analysis, the investigation team reached a cautious but important conclusion. The anonymous call was more likely an intentional misdirection than a genuine statement. The main reasons included: the call was unusually short, with no further description despite prompting. It originated from a public phone booth, a classic way to conceal identity. The content overlapped with what media had already reported. The caller never followed up, despite the case tip line always being open. No witnesses confirmed seeing Ethan forced into any vehicle. Nevertheless, investigators could not completely rule out the possibility that the caller knew something, because the appearance of a silver-gray pickup was the only overlap between the tip and the witness's perceptions the night Ethan vanished. But instead of opening a new direction, the call became a dimly lit dead end. It pushed the investigation into an area of information noise, where every detail could be real or fake, with no immediate way to separate them. Internally, Plano PD began acknowledging that the case was showing signs characteristic of complex disappearances, nameless suspect, mysterious behavior, and the possibility that someone was actively interfering from the shadows, not to help, but to keep the truth buried deeper. Following the suspicious anonymous call, the Ethan Ward case gradually entered the phase every investigator dreads: prolonged stagnation, like a lake that seems calm on the surface, but swallows all traces underneath. Plano PD kept working, still chasing leads, still rechecking CCTV segments, but day by day, the clues grew thinner. The first weeks, the golden time for missing persons investigations, passed without any progress strong enough to keep the case in emergency mode. By the second month, Ethan's file began swelling with many pages, but almost no additional substantive data. This was when all signs cooled, and the Ethan Ward case officially began sliding into what experts call the pre-cold stage, the stage before cold, where every hope that should have appeared did not. By early 1999, With no new information, Plano PD was forced to do what they never wanted: freeze the file in pending investigation status, meaning no dedicated task force was assigned full-time follow-up. The evidence, the Camry, faint fingerprints on the door handles, fabric fibers from the passenger seat, extracted CCTV tapes, was sealed and stored under strict protocol. Everything was placed in case file box 98, missing PLW017, coded to the standards of that era. Ethan's Camry, after full analysis, was sealed and moved to the city's evidence vehicle lot, gathering dust beside dozens of vehicles from other cases. For the Ethan case, silence gradually became the familiar rhythm. The early days had dozens of tip calls, but by 1999, no one remembered Ethan's face on posters at the convenience store. The Oak Point Park area returned to normal. Joggers still passed the road where the Camry was found, but no one connected the spot to a disappearance. In Plano's Major Crimes Investigation Office, the Ethan file lay dormant in a metal cabinet. No one said it, but every investigator knew. The case had entered the cold zone, the zone of deadlock, where everything would stand still until new technology, a new statement, or a perpetrator's mistake appeared. From 1999 to 2002, Plano PD occasionally reopened the file, mainly when a vague match report appeared elsewhere, an unidentified body in Collin County, a disappearance in McKinney, or an arrest involving a criminal using a silver pickup. But each check resulted in a cold note in the file: no match. Events after Ethan's case were incompatible in DNA, traces, or timing. Technology at the time offered no help. DNA from Ethan's car door handles was contaminated with overlapping samples, yielding no clear profile. Faint fingerprints lacked enough characteristics for valid standards. CCTV was too noisy for identification. No mobile location data, no modern intersection cameras, no license plate recognition, LPR like today. Even tracing the anonymous call stopped at the public phone booth, a type of object that left almost no evidence. Nothing new, nothing more. In 2004, a young Plano PD investigator, while reviewing old cold cases, brought the Ethan case back to the table. He tried cross-referencing with the CAUDIS database, then newly expanded, but the Ethan case DNA was too poor quality to enter. He also searched if the silver pickup linked to any federal road criminals, but the volume of silver vehicles in Texas was too large to filter meaningfully. Once again, the Ethan case returned to the cabinet. In 2006, Texas implemented a statewide process merging missing persons and unidentified remains data. A working group reviewed files, trying to find intersections with unnamed victims. The Ethan file was entered into the new system, but results were still zero. No bodies matched Ethan's age, timing, or characteristics. This opened two directions: either Ethan was still alive, a very slim possibility, or the body was never found. The more years passed, the fewer people considered survival. The 2007-2008 period marked a clear shift. The Ethan case was officially classified as a cold case. This didn't mean police abandoned it, but the file was transferred to the unit handling multi-year cases, reactivated only with new information. Here, the file's coldness came not just from lack of data, but from the case's very nature: a person vanishing in minutes from a lit area with cameras and passers-by, leaving no behavior or struggle signs. From an investigative perspective, the Ethan Ward case had all the elements making it hardest to solve. Disappearance in an extremely short time, no signs of violence at the scene, no direct witnesses, key evidence tampered with, staged car, camera capturing only a faint shadow, no identification, calculated attack occurring in the blind spot of all surveillance systems of that era. All these traits led many investigators to quietly agree the perpetrator had to be experienced, or at least very familiar with the terrain. But they found no one in the area fitting that hypothesis. By the end of 2008, the Ethan case marked 10 years with no progress. Evidence boxes began gathering dust. The last newspaper calling for Ethan tips had yellowed. His family still sent annual updates to Plano PD, but police could only respond with one sentence: when new leads emerge, "We will contact you immediately." But for a full decade, no leads appeared, until new technology changed everything. In 2016, after nearly 2 decades of the Ethan Ward file lying in the cold zone, an unexpected event occurred over 300 miles from Plano, at Varner Unit Prison, Arkansas. No one in the Texas investigation force could have foreseen that the first clue after 18 years would come from a place completely unrelated to Plano, let alone from a casually recorded conversation in the prison monitoring system. But right there, in a rundown inmate visitation room, the name Plano was mentioned again, pulling the entire Ethan case back into the light. Charles Reed, 47, was serving time for a series of charges involving federal auto theft, violence, and contraband transport. An unremarkable figure in the prison system, but with a drifter past across southern states in the late 90s. Reed didn't know the visitation room where he was talking to another inmate had just been fitted with a new test audio recording system. The system auto-activated on detecting keywords related to violent crime, but according to reports, the phrase that triggered it wasn't on the official keyword list. It activated on an unclear string of words, lasting nearly 20 seconds, but enough for the shift analyst to rewind. That's when they heard the vague but spine-chilling statement, "Plano, 98, I made a guy disappear." No context, no details, but it couldn't be coincidence. Plano in 1998 had only one unsolved disappearance, Ethan Ward. The analyst immediately sent a report to the warden, who forwarded it to the Arkansas Department of Corrections, and within hours, the information reached a U.S. Marshals Service agent, the unit with direct data sharing to the Texas Rangers. When the document arrived at Texas Rangers headquarters in Austin, an internal call chain was instantly activated. The major violent crimes captain confirmed, "This is not something we can ignore." 2 days later, the Texas Rangers officially entered the case. In Arkansas, Charles Reed was moved to a special interrogation room. When asked about the recorded statement, Reed dodged, smirking as if it was just an impulsive remark. "I was just talking nonsense," he replied. "In prison, we tell tall tales to seem dangerous." But when the Rangers showed him a list of all 1998 Plano disappearances, containing only Ethan Ward's name, Reed stared at the paper longer than necessary. A small reaction, but enough for investigators to note immediately. Reed claimed he had passed through Plano in late 1998, while working as a non-fixed route truck driver. "Pretty much anyone who's driven interstates has stopped in Plano," he said. "You pick up a hitchhiker, stop for supplies. Plano's a place everyone's been through." Reed was right, but investigators weren't asking about Plano. They were asking about a person disappearing. A Ranger investigator opened a photo file and placed Ethan's picture in front of him. Reed didn't touch it, but his eyes flicked over quickly, then he shrugged. "Don't know, never seen him." The Rangers didn't believe him. The reaction wasn't innocent, it was calculating. Pressed further, Reed shifted attitude, defensive, irritable, even angry at times, slamming the table. "I had nothing to do with that guy. I was in Arkansas then, not Texas." But when the Rangers presented 1998 travel logs from the transport company Reed worked for data, showing he was in the Dallas, Fort Worth area the month Ethan vanished, his eyes changed instantly. Not fear, but assessment, as if calculating how much to say. But then Reed shut down. "I'm not saying anything more," he said. "You have nothing to charge me with." For the Texas Rangers, the statement "I made a guy disappear" wasn't enough to charge, but it was enough to reopen the entire case. More importantly, Reed was in the vicinity when Ethan vanished. Even more, he drove a silver pickup in 1998, the type matching the only clue in the Ethan case. Plano PD was officially notified that case, 98, missing PLW 017 had been reactivated. Evidence boxes forgotten for nearly 20 years were pulled from storage. CCTV tapes were scanned into modern image analysis systems. Small evidence, fabric scraps, faint fingerprint samples, was sent to a high-tech lab in Austin for reanalysis with new techniques. The Texas Rangers demanded, "We will review everything from the start, every detail, every discrepancy, every blind spot." The youngest investigator on the team, who had never heard of the Ethan case before receiving the file, said a line the whole room recorded in the minutes: "No one says that if they don't have something on their mind." At that moment, the Ethan Ward case, thought to have sunk to the bottom of every cold case list, became the biggest investigation focus in Plano in a decade. Everything started again, all because of one recorded statement in a prison hundreds of miles away. Plano, 98, I made a guy disappear. When the Texas Rangers decided not to let Charles Reed's statement slide as prison bravado in the visitation room, their next step was what veteran investigators call closing in on the past, tracing Reed's life, movements, jobs, and habits in the exact period Ethan Ward vanished. To determine if the words Plano, 98, were real or just a prisoner's way of seeming dangerous, the Rangers had to reconstruct a year nearly lost from official records. Charles Reed's 1998, when he was a 29-year-old drifter across states, doing a series of temporary jobs. This process was not simple. In 1998, there was no GPS tracking, no clear electronic records, no centralized database for cheap motels, and most temp job payroll records were archived or lost. Rangers had to resort to the most classic investigative method, digging into the scraps of paper only those who lived on the edge left behind. Every old gas receipt, every faded ATM slip, every temp job pay stub, every motel rental voucher now became pieces of the big picture. 1. Old motels, locations nearly vanished from maps. Texas Rangers split up to check a list of 17 motels along interstates. Reed claimed he often crashed at in the 90s. Many had closed, some demolished for commercial developments, but 3 still had paper records in basements, wrapped in torn cardboard boxes. At a motel in Greenville, Rangers found the first notable item, checkout receipt dated May 14, 1998, under C. Reed, location about 25 miles from Plano. The date fell right in the week Ethan vanished. At another motel in Sherman, Rangers found a April 1998 guest register with a scribbled line: Reed, weekly rate, paid cash. No ID attached, but right next to it was a small manager note. Guest drove silver pickup, single cab. The detail matched both witnesses and the anonymous call 18 years earlier. 2. Gas receipts, path recreated through faded numbers. They traced every gas station Reed frequented. Many no longer kept 18-year-old records, but an old station in Melissa still had transaction duplicates because the owner didn't want to toss stuff that might be needed later. Rangers almost couldn't believe their luck until they found the thermal printed receipt, faded text May 12, 1998, gas paid by Reed's card, location, Melissa, Texas, distance from the convenience store Ethan stopped at on disappearance night, under 10 miles. More importantly, transaction time in late afternoon, same day Ethan left work and stopped at the store. When investigators marked this on the map, they realized something chilling. Reed had been right on the highway stretch Ethan drove daily, not casually in DFW area. Reed was actually in the exact radius where Ethan vanished. 3. Temp job payroll, unexpected proof. One of the biggest surprises came from a temp labor agency in McKinney, just miles from where Ethan's Camry was found. Rangers checked routinely at first, expecting little since late 90s, temp records rarely survived, but luck tilted their way. The company habituated keeping paper for old wage disputes. In a box labeled, Temp Workers Q2, 1998, they found a short entry, named Charles Reed Work Week, 04/27, May 15, 1998. Position construction laborer job site, McKinney, Texas. McKinney was under 15 miles from the store where Ethan stopped disappearance night. More importantly, Reed was in the area for 3 straight weeks, perfectly matching Ethan's disappearance time frame. For Rangers, this was no longer coincidence. 4. Compiled timeline, dangerous gap between time markers. When Texas Rangers built Reed's 1998 timeline, they uncovered a spine-chilling truth: 04/27, 05/15, Reed temp working in McKinney. 05s12 gas receipt in Melissa, 0514 motel checkout in Greenville, 05s15, Ethan vanishes in the evening. No evidence of Reed's activities from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. next day, an 8-hour gap right on Ethan's disappearance night. This gap didn't appear in any other week that month, only on 05s15. Investigators noted in the file, no one accidentally hits every case-related location. 5. Silver pickup, finally appearing in real records. After nearly 3 weeks of backtracking, Rangers found the final proof they needed, old Arkansas vehicle registration showing in 1998, Charles Reed owned a silver Chevrolet C1500, exact type witnesses reported, anonymous call mentioned, and CCTV faint reflection size matched. More chilling, the truck was sold by Reed in July 1998, just 2 months after Ethan vanished, to a man in Oklahoma. When Rangers tracked it, the vehicle had been crushed into a block at a scrapyard. Since 2006, trail erased, but info remained. Reed had owned exactly the truck police sought for 18 years. 6. Suspicious matches, no longer coincidence. Connecting all pieces, Texas Rangers realized they built not just a timeline, but countless unexpected intersections, making Reed the first truly logical suspect since 1998. Reed in McKinney, same time Ethan worked in Plano. Reed and Melissa exact day Ethan vanished. Greenville motel proves he overnighted near area. Silver pickup, real in his history. Unexplained 8-hour gap, Reed's history of violence, auto theft, coercive behavior. Reed traveled border zones between Plano and Oak Point Park. Exact direction Camry found. This was no longer pattern of someone casually passing through Texas. This was pattern of a dangerous drifter, moving exact route Ethan did, week Ethan vanished, with vehicle matching description, and gap right on incident night. 7. Rangers officially upgrade Reed to #1 person of interest. On August 22, 2016, Texas Rangers held closed meeting with Plano PD. After presenting timeline and new evidence, they officially announced Charles Reed is no longer just a source, he's a key suspect. They restarted Ethan's file as a full new case, reanalyze evidence with modern tech, extract DNA from old fabric fibers, 3D reconstruct store scene, expand Reed's movement file to neighboring states. From a vague prison statement in Arkansas, Rangers rebuilt a dark 1998 year, and those shadows fell exactly on Ethan's disappearance day. When Texas Rangers finished building Charles Reed's 1998 timeline, one thing became center of all suspicion: the silver Chevrolet C1500 he once owned. For nearly 2 decades, that pickup existed only in scattered witness statements and one anonymous call. No plate, no photos, no 1998 Plano PD records showing it near scene. But now, with Arkansas records confirming Reed owned exact model, Rangers knew they had to hunt every trace of that truck, even if crushed to scrap long ago. For experienced investigators, tracking a vehicle after 18 years is like chasing a distant echo in mountains. Sometimes it vanishes traceless, but sometimes its after sound unlocks the whole case. First thing Rangers did was open DMV files from Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and 3 adjacent states. They filtered matching model, color, and especially old pickups with title changes 1998, 2005, time frame Reed likely sold or dumped it, hundreds filtered, narrowed to about 40 after production year cross-check. Among them, only one showed sold right when Reed left Texas late 1998, silver Chevrolet C1500, Arkansas registered, title transferred to Daniel Hayes in Oklahoma, July 1998, exact truck Reed owned. Rangers immediately contacted Hayes, now in small town outside Tulsa. Hayes said he bought from Shady Guy, and when Rangers showed old Reed photo, he confirmed the seller. Hayes said truck at purchase had a few dents on passenger door and paint chip near front fender. Hayes didn't recall why, just thought minor bumps. But what caught Rangers was another remark. When I bought it, inside smelled like heavy bleach. Smell lingered days. Thought seller just cleaned interior to fake value. This wasn't remark investigators ignored. Heavy bleach smell in old pickup interior, near disappearance timing, always red flag. Hayes said he used truck about 4 years, mostly farm hauling. In 2003 it broke bad and he sold to North Oklahoma scrapyard. Here, hope for evidence thinned, as scrapyards are no analysis environments. But rangers went anyway. One investigator said, "Even a leftover bolt has value." They traced scrapyard archives, dismantled over 6,000 vehicles in 20 years. Scanning 2006 records, they found matching VIN, cold text, crushed, 08-2006, truck cube to metal block. No seats, no handles, no carpet, no DNA testable traces. Seemed all physical traces gone forever. But right at that scrapyard, one surprise survived. Harold, longtime employee, remembered removing one part from that pickup. Plastic tailgate cap, because still usable. In old parts storeroom, rangers found gray-silver plastic cap, VIN numbered. No one thought nameless plastic worth anything, but rangers took it to lab. Cap UV lit, chemically scanned, trace biology stain. After 18 years, no clear DNA, but residue patch matching industrial cleaner haze described. Not prosecutable proof, but indirect that pickup interior, heavily cleaned when Reed sold, happens only when erasing vehicle traces. Rangers traced to crush site, interviewed old metal yard manager. He said in 2006, he met Reed once. Reed came asking retrieve records on old trucks sold 1998. Manager remembered because Reed very agitated learning crushed. This raised rangers' question, why return for records of trucks sold 8 years prior? Nostalgia, or fear? Lead agent said, no one comes back for old truck records, unless worried what it held inside. Trail expanded when rangers reached small Denton auto shop, holding 1998 invoice. Reed replace floor liners, clean interior, recoat truck bed. Replacing full floor liners, in old pickup, not what 90s men did, especially constant travelers unconcerned with looks. More suspicious, invoice dated exact week Ethan vanished. Building full Reed movement timeline, investigators saw pickup shadow emerge as extended vector. Reed working McKinney, Reed gassing Melissa, Reed motel 25 miles from scene. Pickup interior cleaned abnormally, pickup sold right after disappearance. Reed later sought truck records. Witnesses mentioned gray-silver pickup near store. 1998 anonymous call mentioned silver pickup. CCTV reflected shape matching pickup size. Each detail stacked, not random, but perpetrator behavior trying erase traces. Truck not just vehicle, space holding truth, and Reed worked hard erase all from it. But erasing left traces, reason Texas Rangers knew they hit right track. When evidence review meeting ended, one investigator stated flat, "We don't need find truck anymore. We just prove what Reed did night behind its wheel." Pickup physically gone, but its journey stops. Interior changes, invoices, scattered tales, became living evidence, pushing Charles Reed as first central suspect in nearly 20 years. From truck rangers knew one certainty, Reed not just casually in Texas, but present exact where Ethan vanished, driving sole description matched vehicle left in case, leaving cleanup traces exact when Ethan never made home. And that moment investigation advanced to no retreat phase. As the investigation swirled around the silver pickup and Charles Reed's travel schedule, Texas Rangers began doing what they always believed was the fatal weakness of drifter criminals, digging deep into temporary jobs, places no one thought needed records. Meager wages day laborers got at small sites. Types like Reed lived off odd jobs. He left no full banking history, no long-term contracts, but if he was in an area, there would always be some faint trace, a handwritten timesheet, a material invoice stuffed in an old ledger, or a note in a payroll file untouched for 20 years. That's why when Rangers found in Texas state tax records a fragmented piece about a small construction company in Wiley, area very near Lake Lavon, they immediately paid attention. Per raw state system data, Reed had short-term work for a contractor named North Creek Builders in some month of 1998. No specific dates, no position, no details, but just Reed's name in Wiley labor data was unusual. Wiley, Lake Lavon and the route Ethan often took home were mere miles apart, and if Reed really worked there exactly when Ethan vanished, This wasn't just an added detail, it was a massive gap in the entire 1998 investigation. Rangers immediately tracked North Creek Builders, dissolved since 2009, founder deceased, old office closed, no electronic records, but the company was managed by the founder's son as family storage. When Rangers arrived, the son brought out 2 worn-out paper file boxes, mostly damp, corners missing. The search began. In the oldest layer, Rangers found weekly payrolls from April to June 1998, and right on a double-folded page, ink so faded it was hard to read, was a note. C. Read. Day labor, Lavon Spillway Site, Wub K of 5/11. A bolt from the blue. The week of May 11, 1998, was exactly the week Ethan vanished. Not only that, Lavon Spillway Site was the construction area right next to the Lake Lavon Dam, a wide low-traffic at-night zone, many dirt roads to empty lots, and especially right between the convenience store and where Ethan's Camry was found. A temporary site, not fully fenced then, no cameras. This exposed a serious flaw in the 1998 investigation. Plano PD never knew, and was never told, that Charles Reed worked right by Lake Lavon the week Ethan disappeared. Reason North Creek Builders' 1998 payroll was lost in an office move, so temp labor records weren't entered into state tax until Texas digitized in 2003. Then, data only had names, no site locations. Plano PD never saw the 5/11 week detail because it didn't exist in any electronic file that year, meaning for 18 years, no one knew Reed was at Lake Lavon. Texas Rangers immediately returned to the case master map. They overlaid Reed's timeline with the site and realized something troubling. Reed in McKinney mornings and afternoons, per temp job payroll, Reed Gaston Melissa late afternoon, Reed checked out Greenville 0514, Reed working near Lake Lavon, week of 5/11. Ethan vanishes night of 0515, Ethan's Camry found at Oak Point Park, only 8-10 miles terrain from Lake Lavon. Reed's 8-hour gap the night Ethan vanished was no longer just suspicious. It had spatial positioning. He was in a wide empty shortcut-filled area, private enough for coercion, without anyone hearing. When Rangers met former Lavon Spillway co-workers, they found 2 long-retired laborers. One clearly remembered Reed. He was quiet, left site a bit late every night, like he detoured somewhere before heading out. The other said Reed asked about dirt roads around the lake shore, low traffic spots. The question meant nothing then, but now, with Ethan's context, it meant something entirely different. The deeper investigators dug, the more Reed's time tied to Lake Lavon seemed the key to the whole case. Lake Lavon spans thousands of acres, with winding shores, deep water points, tree lines, local-made shortcuts, and dozens of lots once used for material staging. If someone wanted to make a person disappear, this area was ideal, empty, vast, hard to search, and especially, in 1998, no cameras, no fixed night patrols. Rangers asked for the first time what Plano PD in 1998 never asked: if Reed worked at Lake Lavon, is it possible Ethan was ever brought to this area? The silence in the meeting room froze, because if the answer was yes, this would be the first time the case had a potential location tied to Ethan's disappearance, a location never searched. Rangers analyzed all factors: distance from convenience store to Lake Lavon, fits; terrain, nature, fits; Reed's schedule, fits; pickup vehicle, fits; travel route, fits; full darkness timing, fits; privacy, ideal; 20-year gap, high erasure potential, not just fits, it matched to a chilling degree. That same day, Rangers proposed redeploying a full survey of Lake Lavon's entire west shore, including old spillway where construction was, dirt roads to woods, abandoned construction pits, water barrier dike, drained material settling lots, areas with old site containers. They understood. 18 years passed, water shifted, erosion happened, vegetation thickened, terrain changed. But for a case like this, just one fabric scrap, one small metal item, one covered dig mark, or even an underwater anomaly, anything could be a breakthrough. And most importantly, Reed being at Lake Lavon the week Ethan vanished was no longer coincidence. It was a new intersection. the first intersection pulling the case out of total darkness. From the silver pickup, anonymous call, old motels, to the Lavon spillway payroll, the picture emerged. Charles Reed didn't just appear in the area. He ate, slept, worked and moved right among the pieces tied to Ethan. That was the moment Texas Rangers realized they were no longer chasing a potential suspect, they were following the trail of the only person present at every critical case intersection. When Texas Rangers discovered Charles Reed worked at the site near Lake Lavon, the exact week Ethan vanished, a detail missed for 18 years, they knew it was time to return to Varner Unit Prison to face Reed again. Not with the probing attitude of before, but with the cold edge of an investigation file, now with backbone timeline, locations, vehicle, and now a key position never considered. Reed didn't know that, and Rangers wanted to see how he reacted when they put Lake Lavon on the table. The second interrogation took place in a small room, gray concrete walls, flickering neon light. Reed was brought in, hands cuffed in front. He seemed more confident than the first Ranger meeting, even challenging, as if used to pointless prison questionings. Seeing the same investigator faces from a month ago, Reed smirked. "You guys again. I told you last time. I don't know the guy." He said the guy, not Ethan's name, and that alone was enough for the investigator to mentally note. Rangers started gently. They re-asked what Reed had already answered, where he was in 1998, what he did, which states. Reed repeated almost identically to the first story. He was mostly in Arkansas, only stopped in Texas a few times, and didn't know anyone named Ethan. But the investigators had data in hand. They let Reed talk, let him build his timeline from memory, and right when Reed thought he was smooth, the Ranger placed in front of him the handwritten Lavon spillway payroll copy, with Reed neatly in the middle. He froze for exactly 1 second, extremely short, but enough. Reed picked up the paper, looked at the supervisor's scribbled signature, then squinted. "I don't remember this," he said, voice calm, but forced. "Could be someone with the same name." The investigator tilted his head. "Charles Reed isn't that common, and this is near Lake Lavon, week of May 11th, 98. You worked there, right?" Reed crossed arms, face going cold. "I did a lot of temp jobs. I don't remember every one." But what Rangers wanted wasn't the words. They wanted reaction, and the moment Reed heard Lake Lavon, his body changed visibly, shoulders tensed, head dipped slightly, lips pressed into a line, like someone reminded of something he tried to forget. The investigator asked again, this time slow and deliberately emphasizing, "You worked right near Lake Lavon, and the same week, a man vanished from Plano, just miles away." Reed responded instantly, too fast to be natural. "I don't know anything about Lake Lavon." The Ranger gave a thin smile. "You don't know, or don't want to mention." Reed growled, "I said it, I don't know." The Ranger shifted questions. "Where were you the evening of May 15th, 98? Reed tilted his head, looked at a wall spot, "In Greenville." Rangers placed the receipt, 0514 checkout, not 0515. Reed frowned. I must have the day wrong." The Ranger slid the Melissa gas receipt from 0512. Reed glanced and shook head. "Maybe I gassed up heading to Arkansas. Melissa is nearly 200 miles from there." Reed didn't answer. Each question crumbled his timeline piece by piece. What he said matched no data. Rangers logged every contradiction, every tone shift, every blink. They knew he was adjusting answers to what they presented. He circled about McKinney, then denied ever being in McKinney. He claimed work in Sherman, then denied it. Every statement self-contradicted, but the most important was when the investigator said, "The day Ethan Ward vanished, you were working miles from where his car was found. Want to explain that?" Reed suddenly shifted tone. He planted hands on table, leaned forward slightly, voice lowered. "I had nothing to do with any guy disappearing. You heard wrong. We have the recording. I was talking nonsense. Everyone in prison talks nonsense. You said Plano, 98, I made a guy disappear." Reed suddenly smiled, but the evasive kind, not confident. "You think I'm crazy enough to confess to another inmate, not confess, but tell the truth." Reed went silent, a long, heavy, wary silence. Rangers kept pressing. "We know you had the silver pickup. We know you cleaned the interior with heavy chemicals, and we know you asked about dirt roads around Lake Lavon. Reed narrowed eyes. Who said? I never asked. 2 witnesses. Reed squinted longer than usual. They're lying. But the investigator knew he was off rhythm. He denied too fast, too sharp, like trying to slam every door they opened. An innocent person is usually confused or surprised. Reed reacted like someone touched a nerve he didn't want exposed. When asked one last time, did you ever go to Lake Lavon the night of May 15, 98? Reed stared at the investigator and said, I'm not answering that. Not no, not never, but I'm not answering. That statement made Texas Rangers certain they were no longer dealing with a bragger, but someone hiding what happened at Lake Lavon the night Ethan Ward vanished. After the interrogation, the Rangers left the room without a confession, but they had something more important: abnormal reaction to Lake Lavon, continuously contradictory statements, deliberate avoidance, and tension, absent in the first interview. Red walked out with fake confident posture, but Rangers knew one thing for sure: he had slipped, not in words, but in reflexes. And that was enough for them to move to the next phase, send the survey team to Lake Lavon to search for traces. When the first interrogation ended, and Charles Reed inadvertently revealed an abnormal reaction to the name Lake Lavon, Texas, Rangers understood they had touched a hot spot unknown for 18 years. No doubt anymore, if any place tied to the mysterious 8-hour gap the night Ethan vanished, it was this lake, vast enough for a small truck to plunge in and lie at the bottom unnoticed. Lake Lavon wasn't a small fishing pond, but a massive man-made reservoir, over 10,000 acres, varying depths by terrain, bottom full of sediment, old construction pits, mounds, depressions, and dark water points. No one could dive in the late 90s. If someone wanted to make someone disappear, this was Collin County's perfect spot in 1998. Rangers didn't hesitate. Days after questioning Reed, they brought a hydrographic search team to the lake's west shore area near the spillway site where Reed worked. Pickup trucks with side-scan sonar gear parked along overgrown access roads, and many investigators seeing the terrain for the first time were stunned by its vastness and complexity. Right here, the Ethan case might have slept for 18 years. A dive team officer on the shore, staring at the flat water, whispered, if he brought Ethan here, we'd never find anything conventionally. And so sonar, tech non-existent to Plano PD in 1998, became the most critical weapon. Rangers deployed sonar boats moving in parallel sweeps 30 meters apart, each pass recorded as high-resolution grayscale images. Sonar images appeared on screens like strange black and white maps. Bright ripples were rocks, dark patches deep holes, any man-made object showing as irregular shapes. First 3 hours, nothing but chaotic lake bottom. But on sweep 11, about 160 meters from shore, sonar detected a small signal, 3-4 centimeters long, reflecting sound like metal. Not large, not clear, but fairly sharp shape. Sonar team marked coordinates, sent ROV underwater, but bottom mud too thick for easy movement. After tries, a technician attached mini sediment suction net and began clearing the spot. 10 minutes later, the object emerged, thin metal piece, thumb-tip sized, strange serrations on edge. Brought to shore, investigators thought just nameless metal from fishing gear or scrap, but an expert immediately shone light, examined metal edge closely, and stood still seconds before saying slowly, this looks like part of a car key structure. 90s Toyota type. Silence enveloped the entire team. Ethan drove a Toyota Camry. Not all keys identical. Late 90s Camry keys had characteristic edge grooves, notches from key-cutting machines. The metal piece was just a fragment, but exact structure type. If from Ethan's key, it could only reach the lake 2 ways, dropped during struggle, or tossed with the vehicle. Texas Rangers immediately sent the metal to Collin County Lab. Wear marks and corrosion fit long submerged item. No serial, no logo, but tooth structure 82% matched 1997, 1999 Toyota Camry. Key diagrams, enough to be guiding evidence. More importantly, metal lay right near dirt road access to Lavon spillway site, where Reed worked. Could be unrelated, but in investigations, Too many coincidences stop being coincidences. Rangers expanded sonar in fan pattern from initial coordinates. Grayscale images gradually showed uneven bottom, many unusually deep subsidence areas, like troughs from heavy objects sinking then mud-covered. A hydro engineer marked 3 bottom anomaly zones, fitting human body or cargo container size. No one said it, but all understood. If anything dragged or dropped here, sonar might be the only chance to find. Search extended to day 2. On sweep 27, sonar detected small metal reflection cluster, over 3 meters under silt. When ROV suctioned mud sample, they found small tubular metal object, hollow inside, about 5 centimeters long, initially thought screw part, but cleaned, and investigators saw remaining spiral threading. Technician said immediately, could be core tube from magnetic car key. Not certain, but entirely possible, and Ethan's Camry key had small magnetic core and head. 2 small objects, 2 structures matching 1 Toyota key type, 2 sonar signals in same zone, only zone read present when Ethan vanished. Rangers now narrowed search map from entire lake to 300-meter water triangle, between West Levon Shore and Old Spillway, area with many small dirt roads to site, where read could easily access by pickup at night tracelessly. They set dozens of buoy markers, installed cameras recording everything pulled up, deployed high-speed sonar for 3D bottom model. Model emerged like submerged terrain map, showing very long diagonal depression, sign of object dragged across bottom by strong force or current. Tech team assessed trough could form from heavy object dropped, then shifting down bottom slope, like metal barrel, or similar large weight. Couldn't confirm body or related item, but most suspicious area seen since search start. Rangers marked it primary search zone, and investigators said right on boat deck. Reed didn't just stop answering at Lake Levon, he recoiled. He knows what's here. Sonar search didn't end that day, but Toyota key-like metal fragment changed entire investigation direction. For first time in nearly 2 decades, Lake Levon was no longer meaningless empty space on Ethan case map, it became the epicenter, holding Reed's unwanted secret. And most importantly, it gave Rangers reason to keep digging, literally. As discoveries under Lake Levon began shaping a new direction, Texas Rangers returned to the case's starting point, the convenience store, where Ethan last appeared in CCTV. With 1998 data, they had only grainy video, faint glass-reflected shadow, and Camry later found at Oak Point Park. But now, with Reed in all key geographic markers, Rangers believed they could reconstruct the most logical sequence of Ethan's final 3 minutes. Not to prosecute, but to understand what happened between the store and parking lot darkness, on May 15, 1998. They started by resyncing time. Ethan entered store 9:42 p.m., bought water bottle and snack bag. Image of him leaving counter clear, calm face, no stress or worry signs. By 9:47 p.m., camera captured him exiting door and vanishing from frame as door closed. In door glass reflecting parking lot light moment, a figure stood at west edge, upright, unmoving, not facing store. This figure once too vague to identify, but with reflection size, Rangers used upgraded shape analysis tech to estimate height approx. 5'10" to 6'1", matching Reed's prison record height. Not confirmable, but first-time shadow had specific hint to fit Reed's timeline. As Ethan exited, CCTV showed him holding bag and walking right side parking, toward Camry. Next 6-7 seconds, no camera captured his actions. This was the blind zone gap between lot and rear tree line, where yellow pole lights didn't reach. 1998 Plano had no outdoor cameras, and per that year's report, lot fairly empty, only small truck in west obscured corner per witnesses. Rangers mapped 1998 lot and realized, if Reed's silver pickup parked exactly where store employee described, lot edge lights off facing road, Ethan heading to car, had to pass just 20 feet from pickup position. This is when they brought Camry forensics into reconstruction model. Driver's seat pulled farther back than Ethan's habit. Rear view mirror adjusted higher than his usual angle. Exterior door handle unusually wiped clean, like someone tried removing skin oils. On floor mat, small gray fabric fiber and rubber crevice, insufficient for 1998 DNA. but possibly from 90s pickup seat fabric, Loeb confirmed post-2017, comparing to similar C1500s. Putting all details in one timeline, a hypothesis emerged. Not dramatic, no chase scene, but quick, silent, highly calculated action sequence. Rangers built highest probability scenario. Ethan leaves store 9:47 p.m., heads to Camry. Reed, if the reflected figure stood in dark observing. As Ethan passes pickup, Reed could step out, call him or approach directly. Short interaction, maybe few words. Excuse me, or hey man, can you help? Drifters using befriend to close in tactics often start with harmless questions. Ethan, unguarded as front lot well lit, might turn to listen. Exact moment he turned back to lot. Reed needed little time to subdue, not necessarily violence, just push him against door, force into passenger seat, or use hidden hard object. Ethan didn't cry out, fits no witnesses hearing shouts. Lot beside major road, traffic passing, sounds blended into noise. Rangers used 3D simulation to calculate time for quick suppression action. Only 4 to 8 seconds. That's all time Ethan vanished from camera frame. When camera panned elsewhere, it was done. Door closed quickly, no loud noise. If Reed wanted to use Ethan's Camry to leave lot, he could order Ethan passenger seat, head down, or sideways to avoid outside view. But per vehicle forensics, driver seat pulled far back. Ethan never did that, meaning Reed likely drove Camry out himself. This matches initial witness statements. No one saw Ethan drive away from store. Camry not recorded at nearby intersections. Fits if Reed avoided main roads, took back ways to Lake Lavon. Most logical scenario. Reed used pickup to approach Ethan, subdued him, put him in Camry, or forced passenger, then drove Camry out rear lot to east toward Lake Lavon. Silver pickup could follow for Reed to retrieve later, or Reed got pickup after handling Ethan. No Camry collision signs, meaning Reed drove calmly, in control. Displaced items in car, water bottle, paper bag positions, show someone moved them, not panicked, but clearing path or foot obstructions. When Rangers fit this hypothesis into master timeline, every piece matched. Ethan leaves store 9:47 p.m. Reed in area, unaccounted 8-hour gap. Camry found next morning Oak Point Park, position not far from Lake Lavon. Fully fits detour Reed could take. Reed's statements on leaving McKinney, Greenville, appearing Arkansas all mismatched data, and his reaction hearing Lake Lavon, was psychological portrait of someone knowing what he left in dark water. Rangers concluded in minutes, with all current data, most logical hypothesis, Ethan left convenience store, brief interaction with Charles Reed, subdued in parking lot, and taken in Camry. Lake Lavon destination premeditated, or Reed opportunistically used passing remote area. Events quick, unnoticed, fully exploiting cameraless dark zone. No one said it, but all understood. If post-store approach reconstruction correct, Ethan's 18-year story wasn't random disappearance, but purposeful abduction by someone extremely terrain familiar and cold enough to turn a person into a void in under 10 seconds. And only one person fit all data, Charles Reed. The Lake Lavon underwater search and post-store event reconstruction made Texas Rangers realize they had to face Charles Reed again before any peace cooled. Second interview scheduled immediately. No advance notice, no prep time for Reed, no chance to build consistent story. When Reed brought in, he was different, less challenging, avoided direct eye contact with investigators, constantly shifted sitting position. Rangers didn't mention Lake Lavon immediately, instead started with light question, "You sure that night you didn't see Ethan Ward?" Reed crossed arms, showed annoyance, said quickly, "I don't know the guy." Investigator replied, "Not asking if you knew, asking if you saw." This time Reed silent longer, finally said, "I might have seen someone, but not sure." Rangers let answer hang. "Someone? Where?" Reed licked lips, voice softer, "In the lot, from far away only." This statement, just 4 words from far away only, was first crack in 18-year denial wall, because if Reed in the lot, it meant he was at exact point Ethan last appeared. Investigator slammed file on table. "Good, Now tell truth, you were in convenience store parking lot. Night of May 15, 98. Reed flinched, voice tense. I just passed by. Didn't stop. But rangers immediately showed enlarged CCTV reflection photo, upgraded showing upright stance, exact Reed height. Reed glanced, face visibly paled. I wasn't standing there, he said, but voice no longer certain. Investigator didn't argue. Just slid another paper. Melissa gas receipt 0512, Lake Lavon site payroll 5/11, and Camry fabric fiber forensic report. Then said slowly, here's the thing, Reed. You say you didn't see Ethan, but forensics in car say driver that night wasn't Ethan, and we found Toyota key piece under the lake. If you only saw from far, how'd you know Ethan was there? At this moment, Reed hesitated. He narrowed his eyes, as if calculating his response. I did see him leave the store, he said, the words bursting out too suddenly, as if he had held the secret too long, and could no longer control it. The investigator leaned forward. And what did you do? Nothing, Reed said, voice slightly trembling. I just noticed. Why? Reed gritted his teeth. Because he walked past my truck. The investigator didn't miss the opportunity. Which truck? Reed showed a flash of panic, then said, pick up, my truck back then. Rangers immediately noted it. Reed had never admitted driving the silver pickup that night, but now he had slipped. The investigator shifted tactics, not attacking directly, but speaking softly. Reed, you're not as smart as you think. The good hider says nothing, but you're saying it piece by piece. Reed breathed heavily, eyes leaving the table. Rangers kept pressing. You stood by the truck. You saw Ethan. Ethan walked past. Then what happened? Reed shook his head. I didn't touch him. You sure? I just talked. This was when Rangers played the Lake Lavon sonar findings recording, not to present, but for psychological pressure. The sound of the ROV dive and technician saying this could be part of a Toyota car key echoed in the room. Reed went pale. The investigator asked, if you just talked, why is Ethan's key part at the bottom of Lake Lavon, exact area you worked? Reed clenched fists, until knuckles white. I don't know anything about a key. You know very well. Reed fumbled for words. Maybe it fell from the pocket. I don't know. Whose pocket? His. Ethan never went near Lake Lavon. Reed went silent. Rangers kept closing the timeline. You worked at the spillway. You got off around 8:30. Ethan left the store 9:47. From then to midnight is your unexplained gap. Want to try again? Reed stammered. I don't remember. You don't remember, but remember standing in the lot clearly. Reed suddenly snapped. I just saw him from far. He walked by my truck. I just asked one question. Rangers seized it immediately. What question? Reed looked down at the table, saying almost in a whisper, asked if he knew the way to Lake Lavon. The investigator stood up, saying nothing. Reed had just inadvertently admitted what no one knew for 18 years. He had proactively mentioned Lake Lavon in the interaction with Ethan, and it matched perfectly with the reconstruction hypothesis that their interaction lasted only seconds before Ethan was subdued. Rangers returned to the table. What did Ethan say? Reed trembled slightly. He said no. Then I left. Reed, if you left, why was the Camry found in Oak Point Park, not at the store? Reed didn't answer. The investigator delivered the final push. If you left, why does forensics in the car show the driver's seat pulled back for a 6'0" person, your exact height? Reed stared at the investigator, then said, I didn't drive his car. You sure? Reed buried face in hands. I don't remember anything anymore. But Rangers remembered clearly. He had just inadvertently confirmed 3 key points. He was in the lot. He directly interacted with Ethan, and he mentioned Lake Lavon in the conversation. The statement fragments fell out involuntarily, but that's why they were more credible than any denial he had ever given. 3 weeks after the second interrogation, Texas Rangers and Collin County Sheriff's Office agreed the time was ripe to shift from investigation to legal action. The scattered clues, no one connected for 18 years, 1998, stray gas receipt, temp payroll at site near Lake Lavon, abnormal reaction hearing spillway, mentioned statement, saw Ethan from far, suddenly turning to eye. Just asked him one question, plus strange fabric fiber and seat adjustment in the Camry, all combined into a logic chain the Collin County DA described in the indictment file as a single unbroken curve leading straight from the convenience store lot to Lake Lavon. On the evening of September 14th, Reed was extradited back to Texas under federal order. The arrest happened right in Varner Unit Prison Yard. No noise, no heavy force. Reed saw Rangers enter, and he knew immediately what was happening. Still he tried a faint smile, saying, "You have no body, no camera, no direct witnesses. You have nothing." The lead investigator replied coldly, "We have you." Reed went silent, confidence vanishing in rare seconds. When the marshal's plane landed at McKinney National Airport, Reed was officially under Collin County custody. The next morning, he was brought to district court for preliminary charges: tampering with evidence, kidnapping resulting in disappearance, obstruction, and a new Texas charge, recently applied to cold cases, without victim recovery, but strong evidence, deprivation of liberty, with intent to conceal a missing person. Small courtroom, but packed atmosphere. Media flocked because the Ethan Ward case once shocked Plano in 1998. In the charging file, DA cited no direct pointer evidence, but built investigative logic via modern forensic model, environmental data behavior, opportunity statement, inconsistencies, geographic link accumulated indirect evidence. Judge allowed DA to present a nearly 20-minute evidence journey, unprecedented in arraignment. DA stood at podium, turned on screen, showed event chain from store CCTV, reflection shadow, lot diagram, to Reed's movement map based on payroll, motel receipts, and stored federal location data. Then DA paused at a silent but heavy image, the Lake Lavon sonar photo with metal matching Toyota key. "This isn't isolated evidence," DA said, "but an unbroken chain with no point detachable from Reed." Reed's lawyer objected strongly. "No body, no direct DNA, no one saw my client touch Ethan, and can't prove Ethan was harmed." But DA replied, "Texas law doesn't require victim recovery to prosecute disappearance with coercion or concealment elements." In the courtroom, reporters noted frantically, "Indictment accepted." Reed transferred to Collin County Detention Center, where he became center of the area's biggest investigation in 20 years. In subsequent hearings, DA presented fuller picture. Reed at store exact time Ethan exited, his statements constantly changing, Camry forensics completely contradicting Ethan driving himself, car staged to mimic Ethan abandoning it for walk, and most importantly, Lake Lavon work timeline, placing Reed right place, right time to dispose evidence. A small document portion presented to grand jury and prelim, photo of Reed's strong reaction asked about Lake Lavon, in interview 1, and surviving Arkansas prison recording. When Plano, 98, I made a guy disappear played in court, many jurors looked at each other, not because the statement was legal proof, but because it framed the entire file and consistent behavior. From then, Reed and his lawyer shifted strategy, from absolute denial, to demanding proof of evidence collection errors. But errors they found were all in 1998, files, era with many limits, post-2016 re-investigation, nearly flawless. After 4 months pre-trial arguments, DA delivered final message: "We will take this to jury trial. If needed, weeks long. We have strong forensic logic, tight timeline, and multiply contradicted statements. We believe conviction likelihood very high." Reed, for the first time, showed clear unease. What worried him wasn't what DA had, but what he knew he did. If jury just assembled in order, no escape. Official trial set for July. But 3 weeks before opening, Reed requested DA meeting. His lawyer advised say nothing, but Reed ignored. In small Collin County court meeting room, Reed looked straight at DA, said, "I don't want trial, I'll plead to some charges." DA waited silently. Reed tried holding last posture, "I just want reasonable custody conditions in exchange." DA read his emotions like open book. They offered plea deal. Reed plead guilty to kidnapping, resulting in disappearance, tampering with physical evidence, and obstruction. In exchange, prosecution not pursue max federal sentence. Reed sat still, hands clenched, finally sighed. Fine, I plead. DA asked, you plead because you did it. Reed answered, I plead, because I know you'll prove it, not confession, but enough for court to accept plea deal. At sentencing, Reed stood before judge, heard verdict, 40 years for coerced disappearance charge, 15 years for tampering, 10 years for obstruction, total 65 years, consecutive, no early release chance first 30 years. Leaving courtroom, Reed said nothing more. He just glanced back at DA, eyes not hate, but acknowledgement. He had lost. The Ethan Ward case, once seen as unsolvable disappearance, finally had legal closure after nearly 2.5 decades. And Collin County could mark that for the first time. A nobody cold case was resolved via modern forensics, behavioral inference modeling, and tiny clues once seemingly worthless, but in right position became mapped straight to truth. When the judge struck the final gavel and Reed was let out, the Ethan Ward case officially closed legally. But for investigators and law enforcement community nationwide, this wasn't the end, but start of major questions. Why did a disappearance in Plano, one of America's safest suburbs, drag 26 years? Why did 1998 pieces take over 2 decades to connect? And how could a no-body, no clear camera, no direct witness disappearance reach prosecution and conviction with such certainty? Collin County DA and Texas Rangers, post-trial summary, provided key assessments, later used in National Advanced Missing Persons Investigation Training. First, 26-year drag, because 1988, 2000, was pre-modern forensics era. Many simple evidences, strange Camry fabric fiber, driver seat adjustment, door trim dust, in 1998, insufficient for analysis. But by 2010s, they became keys via fabric sequencing tech, micro-force seat analysis, and especially software reconstructing driver posture from contact patterns. Not case lacking clues, but science not ready to read them. DA wrote in report, Ethan didn't vanish into air, he left traces. We just took too long learning to see them. Second, 1998, overlooked signs delayed investigation years. That year's file showed key details, not fully processed, Camry treated as abandoned vehicle, not evaluated as staging scene, seat direction seen as possible Ethan posture change, not analyzed for force bias like today. CCTV reflection noted vaguely, but not enlarged or cleaned with specialized tech. Plus, no sweep of sites near Lake Lavon, while Reed present their exact needed time frame, was major procedural miss. All misses not from negligence, but era limits, disconnected data, fragmented records, immature forensics. Ethan case showed in missing persons probes, no detail too small to ignore, because a Toyota key fragment under lake bottom 18 years became the clincher forcing Reed's slip. Third, case turning point from unpredictable factors, especially Arkansas prison recorded statement, Plano, 98, I made a guy disappear. Not legal proof, but catalyst for Texas Rangers, reopening file and feeding all old data into new analysis systems. It showed in cold cases, biggest clues sometimes from random event chain, but only effective when investigators maintain active cold info intake and processing, not leaving to fate. Fourth, case proved value of behavioral forensics and opportunity abuse modeling. Reed had no clear motive, no heavy violence priors then, no personal Ethan link, but behavior model fit impulse abductor type, short stalk victim, quick exploit gap to subdue and move from marker, fitting entire timeline from store to Oak Point Park and Lake Lavon. DA described in report, Reed's behavior explains time gap, evidence explains behavior. Fifth, Ethan became national case study, not for complexity, but converging factors, witnessless disappearance, staged vehicle, faint evidence, vast location, no motive, multi-state suspect, no body recovery. Such factors usually kill cases year one, but Ethan proved cold case not synonymous with unsolvable. No body not endpoint, just another equation variable. Even FBI, in 2023 National Investigation Seminar, listed Ethan in top 10 cold case turnarounds, illustrating long-term solve via environmental forensics and linkage logic. Finally, and most importantly, summary stated clearly. Biggest lesson is persistence. Plano PD, Collin County DA, and Texas Rangers twice thought case hit ceiling, 1999 and 2008, but keeping file open, evidence properly stored, periodic forensic tech updates, revived case when chance appeared. A case dies only when investigators quit, DA wrote. In 26 years, no one quit. On closure day, Ethan Ward file not just closed as solved case, but entered official training archives of Texas Rangers, FBI Academy, and National Center for Missing Adults, as proof a decades-long disappearance can reach answer with enough patience, meticulousness, and tech to see what naked eye initially missed. And in Plano, where Ethan left the convenience store on a quiet, seemingly normal night, now added a procedural lesson to history. In long-term missing probes, every detail, no matter how small, can be the final piece. Ethan's story, vanishing in quiet suburb, like Plano, Texas, reminds us that life in America today seems safe, but always has dark gaps between home and convenience store, between lit parking lot and roads to empty Lake Lavon. Ethan just did very American thing. Late shift end, stop for water bottle and snack bag, then drive Camry home. But that subjective moment, stepping through dimly lit lot, open 26-year tragedy. Car staged at Oak Point Park, driver seat misadjusted from habit, Toyota key fragment silent under Lake Lavon bottom decades, all show bad actors, need no complex plan, just victim believing here it's fine. In today's America, where teens still walk to convenience stores, students late shifts, workers home on familiar routes, practical lesson: don't let safe suburb feeling drop guard. Notice dark lots, idling vehicles, lights off, strangers approaching too close. Share live location with family night travel, set simple check-in habit via text. From community side, Ethan's story shows persistence value. If old Plano PD and Texas Rangers hadn't sealed evidence, kept files, modern forensics, Lake Lavon sonar, seat analysis, key fragment, never would speak. In rule of law society like America, ordinary citizens can learn two things: self-protect in everyday situations, and support long-term investigation investment, so no missing person becomes cold line fading to oblivion. If you want to follow more missing cases, solved by resolve, science, and persistence like Ethan Ward's, remember subscribe channel, to not miss next stories. Thank you for joining, and see you in next video, where we continue decoding mysteries, seemingly forever unanswered.